Good thing I've never taken you seriously.
And the lyrics are more dumbed down than ever before.
Man, rap today fucking sucks bad. They're not even saying words anymore. They just got a hard-ass fucking beat to trick dumbasses like you to make you think you like the shit.
I need a minute.
The fuck is this? God damn.
Alright. Sorry about that. Let's just keep going. What do you say?
We've hit a brick wall. There hasn't been a single authentic movement in popular music for the last quarter of a century.
He said over footage of Oasis, a band formed by the two most narcissistic rock musicians of all time, or at least recent time. You really have no sense of irony, do you? But okay, you say that there hasn't been a single authentic movement in popular music for the last quarter of a century. Let's name a whole bunch of them. The Britpop of the 1990s, IDM and trip-hop from the same time period, the post-punk revival of the 2000s, pop-punk in the 2000s, which is significant even if people like me aren't huge fans, the ever-growing popularity of indie rock, pop, folk, and tronica in the 2010s, alternative hip-hop subgenres like conscious, abstract, and industrial hip-hop, as well as the revival of 90s boom bap and jazz rap, which have all been on the rise since the early 2000s and are still becoming more and more popular, the resurgence of contemporary R&B and neo-soul, and new prog and prog rock and prog metal. I could go on for a while, which leads me to believe that it must take a lot of effort on Paul's part to not pay any attention to the evolution of music over the past 25 years. There have been plenty of significant movements in popular music the whole time, and you're really missing out. I'd recommend you a few records, but I'm sure you'd find them hideous.
And look at the effect it's had. Young people were once able to channel their self-loathing, their anger, through the medium of rebellious music. Think punk, grunge, goth. Now, they're all growing up listening to sterile drivel like One Direction and Maroon 5.
If you'd made this video 20 years ago, you'd have swapped out 1D and Maroon 5 for NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. The idea that punk, grunge, or goth were on the same level of popularity in their time as One Direction is today is almost hilarious in how out of touch it is.
Yes, we always had manufactured plastic crap.
Okay, so you admit it then?
But we also had alternatives. Now there are no alternatives.
Paul, there are currently more alternatives to top 40 radio than at any other time in the history of recorded music. Do you honestly think Katy Perry is the only music that exists right now?
They just don't get the airtime.
Oh, so I guess you're too lazy to turn the dial on your radio, or even just turn the radio off and go digging through stuff on Spotify or Pandora, or even the very website this video is posted to?
MTV used to play alternative music videos.
Is that what they mean when they say videos have symbolism?
What does MTV play now? 16 and Pregnant.
You seem to be forgetting that the popularity of television is in decline thanks to online video. Sure, 16 and Pregnant is shit, but why harp on that when you can find every music video MTV ever played back in the day in just a few keyboard strokes?
Musicians with actual talent and authenticity, because they still exist, are prevented from challenging this sterile status quo.
I don't know about you, but it seems to me like a lot of those talented musicians are doing pretty well for themselves. Thousands, if not millions, of adoring fans, sold-out venues, critically acclaimed records, but they're not HOPSIN, so I guess you just don't give a shit about them.
While talentless, button-pushing, noise-vomiting DJs are deified.
Do you have any idea how much effort it takes to make, for instance, a song by Skrillex? You might think it's ear-grating and annoying, and in fact it might actually be ear-grating and annoying, but there's actually a lot of elements that go into a song like Bangarang. It's a lot more than just pushing buttons, you know. I bet if you sat down in front of a digital audio workstation and tried to make something even half as competent, you'd have no idea where to even start.
Millennials have been stripped of the ability to diffuse their adolescent rage and alienation into music or subculture.
I know plenty of fellow millennials who diffused their adolescent rage and alienation into Green Day, My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, and Panic at the Disco back in the day. Many of us still diffuse those feelings into Brand New, Modest Mouse, Weezer, and plenty of other emo trash. And by trash, I mean this album is amazing.
So they turn to the mental ghetto of identity politics instead.
Wait, why are we bellyaching about identity politics now?
And that hasn't gone so well.
Paul, don't you engage in identity politics a fair bit yourself? You seem to take a lot of pride in your conservative identity, and you do a fair bit of demonizing of people who identify as leftists, feminists, and whatever else you don't like.
What has my generation contributed to advance popular culture over the last 30 years?
Wait, first it was 20 years, then it was a quarter century, now it's 30 years. Make up your mind.
Humiliatingly little. Seriously, what have we contributed? Can you name anything positive? Gangster rap? A movement that encouraged millions upon millions of young people to aspire to act like degenerate criminal thugs.
I think I'm only just a few years younger than you. Yeah? Gangster rap predates us both, and doesn't encourage people to act like violent thugs as much as it simply portrays the lifestyle of gangsters. Again, this is really similar to the argument that video games make people violent. It holds no water.
Yeah, that worked out great, didn't it?
So it wasn't the war on drugs or the increasing militarization of the police that caused the increased incarceration rates that Paul is showing. It was gangster rap. That's not a terribly thorough and inventive argument you've got there. Your analyses haven't really been especially thorough this time around in general. It's just silly.
But then look at someone like HOPSIN.
Ah, not this again.
Here's a guy who raps about how retarded and destructive gangster chic is. A guy who tells young people to get off drugs and live clean. What happens to musicians like HOPSIN? Yeah, some of them get signed to big labels, but then they get parked for 3 years, or their albums are deliberately given no promotion. They're never allowed to obtain superstar status. Their message represents a threat to cultural Marxism, a threat to the toxic identity that the music industry force feeds young people.
I just can't believe it. You actually think HOPSIN is a voice of reason with regards to the current state of popular music and not just a cringeworthy waste of time. He's basically that 13-year-old wrong generation kid I mentioned in the last video, personified in the form of one of the shittiest rappers in the history of hip-hop. I'm surprised you called out celebrities for their narcissism, and then turn around and hold up HOPSIN as a good example of anything. He constantly prattles on in his music about how hip-hop is dead and he's bringing it back. There's hardly anything more narcissistic than that. And of course there was that one line, or several lines. I really could just end the video here. I mean, any credibility you had at the start of this train wreck just got burned away in a dumpster fire. Hold on. Do I get it now? Do I understand this? HOPSIN is if InfoWars was a rapper. Oh wait, no, that's Immortal Technique. So Immortal Technique is InfoWars and HOPSIN is Prison Planet.
Their message represents a threat to cultural Marxism.
There's not some big conspiracy to keep people like HOPSIN down. HOPSIN can't help that he sucks. Does HOPSIN even buy into this whole cultural Marxism conspiracy theory? That's what it is, by the way, a conspiracy theory. It's completely baseless in its assertions and utterly laughable as a concept.
Look at youth counterculture. In the past, youth culture was spearheaded by students. They created the counterculture, which then trickled down into pop culture. What are students busying themselves with today? Safe spaces, political correctness, virtue signaling, and gender studies.
Oh, sorry, did you say something? I must have tuned out all that meaningless prattle about safe spaces and gender studies.
As Theodore Dalrymple noted, the pressure to conform to canons of popular taste, or rather lack of taste, has never been stronger. Everyone's petrified of constant social media surveillance by their peers.
Reactionary! Rebel!
Disharmonious!
Rebel! Reactionary!
And we force ourselves to swallow this rotten culture, just so we can feel an affinity with our peers. So we can fit in.
You keep including yourself in all this. We this, we that, but you've made it clear you don't like any of this stuff, so why bother?
That's why there's no discernible youth counterculture. It's all predicated on conformity.
You must conform. Yes, it is my sworn duty to see that you do conform.
There hasn't really been a counterculture in the traditional sense since the hippie movement. And no, conservatism still isn't a counterculture. Usually countercultures can't be identified as countercultures until they've stood the test of time. So of course we don't have a counterculture right now because we're not really sure what it is yet. Although I would say if we had to choose a counterculture that exists today, I think leftism might be a good candidate.
And kids today are so satiated with the deluge of entertainment on offer that they have no time or interest in rebelling against the received culture. No time to create their own look. No inclination to form their own ideas about the world, when it's so much easier to just regurgitate what Russell Brand or Meryl Streep is saying.
Don't you dare lump me in with liberals. Can't stand when people do that. Okay, so from this point on, I'm gonna be skipping around a little bit. There's not much left to go, and I've said a lot already, so a lot of it is just kind of Paul repeatedly whining about S-Jews, so we're gonna get to more substantive things now. Okay, I'm gonna summarize the rest of this video in bullet points. Paul proceeds to ramble on about modern art, which I don't think has ever really been an aspect of popular culture. The stuff he's gawking at seems pretty niche and not even remotely on the same level of popularity as Kesha or Russell Brand. He bemoans political correctness for ruining actual works of art, which is a loaded term in and of itself.
Actual works of art are being renamed because the original title might be offensive.
I didn't know that art you dislike has less worth than art you do like. He also cherry-picks modern theater, forgetting about the geniuses that have come since Shakespeare and Oscar Wilde in place of a clip of some theater production that's so short I can't even begin to understand why he hates it. Look at all these people just singing tunelessly in a room and making masturbatory hand symbols. It's Marxism. All of it. It has to shut it down. Shut it down. And he repeats himself some more about how the fact that art is bad means that civilization is going to collapse. I thought we lefties were the sensitive ones. I'd say more about this art stuff, but it's not really my field, and Sean and Jen did it better than me anyway, so just go watch their video, actually. One of the final points of the video is that popular culture is cited as a reason that Islamic terrorists exists. Wait, what?
Jihadists in the West often immerse themselves in this culture and then become suicide bombers as the only form of repentance. That's how bad it is. That's right, Jersey Shore and Miley Cyrus are actually seen by terrorists as legitimate reasons to attack the West. And who could argue with them?
Paul, buddy, no one should be this stupid. You can't be this stupid. You actually think popular culture justifies attacks on the West. This video takes the #1 spot for worst video I've seen all year. How can you hold the view that leftists are justifying the actions of Islamic terrorists in the name of political correctness, and then justify the acts of Islamic terrorists with Jersey Shore?
But seriously, when we defend Western civilization, we're not talking about popular culture. We're talking about the Sistine Chapel, not Piss Christ.
Hey Paul, guess what? Art is subjective.
We're talking about Beethoven, not Bieber.
I don't think anybody views Justin Bieber as a modern analog to Beethoven, guy. Maybe try Bob Dylan, John Lennon, and Paul McCartney, if you're classy Duke Ellington.
But we've become bored of what we've inherited. The true meaning behind the rich tapestry of our cultural heritage has been forgotten. Popular culture, as it exists today, actually represents a direct threat to Western civilization.
Which is another way of saying it offends your senses because you're a complete and total prude. Is there anything that you would consider to not be a threat to Western civilization? Your moral panic levels are skyrocketing.
The weaponization of popular culture, as I've described it, is merely the reassertion of cultural Marxism.
More of this. I grow tired.
We need to reject popular culture in all its grisly, grotesque, dehumanizing forms. We need to encourage a new cultural renaissance that is once again inspired by beauty, talent, and the exaltation of human accomplishment.
If it involves more people like HOPSIN popping up all over the place, I want no part in your renaissance.
Did I mention he writes for InfoWars?
Click the link below to subscribe to the channel, and for more breaking news, go to Infowars.com.
How precious. He's trying to be a journalist. Too bad Infowars is just a propaganda machine. So, to wrap things up, I thought I'd have a bit of fun. Paul seems to be fixated on the past 20 or 25 or 30 years of popular culture. Apparently it's only in this time frame that things went sour. In order to challenge this notion, I've compiled a list of examples of pop culture, mostly music since that's my area, ranging from the Middle Ages to around the 1980s. Again, I changed the definition of popular culture to just mean culture which is popular, and I'm sure Paul would call all this stuff depraved if he were around at the same time as the given part of culture. My point in doing this is that the culture Paul holds in such high esteem is, and was, often just as explicit as much of the pop culture he seems to hate today. First up, the Bible. By modern standards, the Bible, especially the Old Testament, is incredibly vulgar. Sit down and give it a read sometime with your modern sensibilities on, and you might find yourself pretty disgusted, actually. From the Middle Ages to the end of the Renaissance, the musical interval called the tritone was rejected by composers and deemed unusable. It was referred to as diabolus in musica, or the devil in music, and was seen as invoking evil. People were really afraid of sound waves back then. Shakespeare had an incredibly dirty mind, slipping jokes about all manner of sexual activities into his plays, which is interesting because Paul claims to like Shakespeare. Sean and Jem made that point already. I'm just gonna... Mozart wrote canons with such descriptive titles as Lick Me in the Ass and Lick My Ass Right Well and Clean. Another one of his canons contains the text good night, shit in your bed and make it burst, good night, sleep tight, and stick your ass to your mouth. One of the greatest composers of all time, writing a poem about ass eating. The Victorians, prudish as they may have been, were into some interesting erotic fiction. Alright, we're gonna jump forward a bit now to the Beatles. One of the most popular bands of all time. A lot of people say they're the greatest of all time. They wrote a lot of songs with some pretty crude themes. The title of Ticket to Ride is thought to refer to the clean bill of health ticket that prostitutes in Hamburg carried around with them. And if that's true, then the song becomes about a woman leaving her man to become a prostitute. Just a bundle of good times. Run for Your Life is about a guy who vows to kill his partner if he ever catches her with another man, and Maxwell's Silver Hammer is ostensibly about a killing spree, and it's a little bit upbeat so you can forgive the fact that you wouldn't realize it's about a killing spree. And that's not even to mention all the songs about drugs. So many drugs. What a terrible influence the Beatles is on our youth. More generally speaking, rock music created a colossal amount of moral panic when it first became popular. As recently as the modern day, rock musicians have been accused of inspiring evil thoughts in their listeners, and even of being Satanists. Rock and roll musicians of the 50s were seen as a menace to society, and as the decades progressed, the panic grew. Heavy metal caused a huge stir, being blamed for suicides and school shootings and all other manner of terrible things. Paul seems to profess a fandom in goth music, but I bet if he was around in the 90s, he'd be right alongside the people blaming it for the Columbine massacre. That and video games. And finally, glam metal. It's just glam metal. Like, I mean, look at this. This is incredibly decadent. Seems like pop culture has been this way for longer than you think, Paul. I'm surprised civilization hasn't just collapsed already. I'm surprised it didn't collapse years ago. Maybe the reason why that hasn't happened is because culture is a reflection of the attitudes of a society. The feelings of unrest and desire for social upheaval that have come and gone over the course of the centuries have led to some pretty interesting works of art and film and media and television and theater and all the rest. Society doesn't respond to culture. If anything, it's exactly the opposite. And with regard to mass-produced popular culture in specific, the Frankfurt School didn't really have much to do with that. In fact, many critical theorists and other leftists have been critiquing mass culture for a while. Theodore W. Adorno and Noam Chomsky have done pretty extensive work in that field. Paul might be surprised at that, and quite honestly, I hope he is. Those guys got a bit further down to the root cause of why popular culture is the way it is. It's not because of cultural Marxism. If anything, the blame can be squarely placed on the culture of capitalism. It's not so much the content of mass media itself that's the decadent thing. It's the way in which that media is created and transmitted. Chomsky called it the most sophisticated propaganda machine in the world, and that's a claim I'd have a lot of trouble disputing. So next time you see somebody blaming the ills of society on gangster rap or a painting they think is bad, you just have my full permission to just laugh in their face and just run away. Just walk the other way. Just go. Don't let these moralizing prudes have an effect on the media you consume, and especially disregard them if they start mumbling about something Marxism, Frankfurt School, postmodernism, nihilism, bleh. Culture is whatever you make of it. So, with that in mind, go forth, my degenerate brethren, and take control of society to reshape it in your... Wait, no, that's not what I meant. Something's gone wrong. I have to... Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for making it through 2 videos that were probably way too long for their own good. Sorry this one took a while to come out compared to the other one, But you know what? My excuse is that I'm a full-time student, so there you go. I make these videos whenever I can. I try and have a schedule, and then it doesn't work. We hit 5,000 subscribers recently, didn't we? So, that's cool. It's interesting to me that many people are into this, are into seeing what I do. And it's even more humbling to think that people are giving me money to do this, just like these people over on Patreon whose names are floating by right now. If you want to join them, the link is in the description where you can go and support. If you donate $2 or more, you'll get into this Discord server that I've got called the Think Tank, which is just a bunch of fun. It's really great to have people in my audience who are willing to support what I do and are also smarter than me and appreciate shitposting as much as me. We have a fun time over there, and these videos would absolutely not be the same without them, so major kudos. I will also say, if you donated at that tier and didn't get the invite yet, check your Patreon messages or message me. I may have messaged you. Basically, just send me your Discord tag and I'll get you in. That should be a good old time. And I also made a paypal.me recently for people who don't like recurring donations, so that'll be in the description somewhere. And lastly, thanks to all the hate watchers who made Operation 1Z a rousing success and implied that I am mentally deficient and have serious problems because I decided to wear a thing. The rationality of these people is just off the charts, so, you know, big ups, man, big ups. So with that said, I'm gonna go and work on the next project, whatever that might be. I never know until I start. So, see ya, stay legend, bye.